1975, Senator William Proxmire began issuing his Golden Fleece Awards. These awards were presented in order to focus media attention on projects that Proxmire viewed as self-serving or wasteful of taxpayer dollars. The first Golden Fleece Award was awarded to the National Science Foundation for funding an $84,000 study on why people fall in love. Following on from Proxmire, we have, as a society, gone through various waves of public speakers, particularly people in Washington, who make grand statements that begin with, "I'm not a scientist, but..." "I'm not a scientist, but..." Can you believe that we spend $1 million studying the sex life of screwworms? That's a real thing, by the way. Can you believe that we spend $1 million determining that male fruit flies prefer younger female fruit flies? Also a real study. That's an interesting question. Can you believe? But shouldn't it be followed by another question, though? A question like, why would anyone take the time to study what makes fruit flies weak at the knees? In response to the Golden Fleece Awards in 2012, the Golden Goose Awards were founded with bipartisan support in Congress that take these kinds of statements that you might hear people chortling about and demonstrate how that study saved or improved human life. There was a study about massaging the backs of young rats. It's giving baby rats back massages. It was funded with taxpayer money. Outrageous, we say, except that that study offered enormous value to the way in which we ought to treat premature babies in the NICU. Acoustic trauma in the guinea pig cochlea, that was another one that was made fun of. It's resulted in treatments for hearing loss in infants. This, of course, all has its roots in a small paper published in 1926 entitled Antibacterial Substance Infiltrates of Broth, which became the groundwork for a medicine you might have heard of named penicillin, which some estimates peg at having saved, a couple of 100 million lives. So there's the question, can you believe it? And then there's the question behind the question. Gertrude Stein was reported to have asked on her deathbed, "What is the answer?" Wouldn't it be nice if that were the case, even at the end of life? At some point, there was a promise in this life that the key, the reason to be, anything, everything, all of it would be revealed. Apparently, a little while after she asked, "What's the answer?" she sat up in bed and asked instead, "Well, what's the question?" Sometimes the Bible asks the questions we've been asking internally, only the question has been tucked away, lost amidst all of the other questions that we've been asking, you know. The questions I ask myself a lot: where are my keys? Why can't that child put his dishes in the dishwasher? I have only said it 184,000 times. Why is my coworker so absent-minded? That is not one I ask very often. What is up with, and then just insert the name of a family member or celebrity or a politician. What is up with? These questions seem important at the time, and of course they are in their own way, and also there are bigger, deeper questions that lie behind our momentary concerns. As Frederick Buechner says, when we lose track of questions of meaning, life and death questions, questions about the things that always matter, it can be easy to lose track of who we are and where we're going. The Bible does ask some pretty deep questions. What does it profit a person if he or she shall gain the whole world and lose their soul? Am I my brother's keeper or sister's keeper? If God is for us, who can be against us? How can someone be born again if they are old? What does a person gain by all the toil under the sun? Who is my neighbor? The Bible attempts to answer a number of these important questions, and it might not be easy for you or for me to accept the answers that it provides. But that is, I think, a key component of our spiritual walks. We may initially turn to the Bible or to church or to religion and first ask, as Gertrude Stein did, what's the answer? And sometimes the answers we find are of enormous help and comfort. And also we might learn that in fact we are better off, instead of asking for an answer, asking for a new or different question. Jeremiah's prophetic words are, and you might have come to expect this if you have heard me talking about the prophets before, Jeremiah's prophetic words are written when things are not going very well. The prophecy is that someday there will be a righteous branch in the land, a future king or ruler, because Jeremiah doesn't see a lot of righteousness in his land. That ruler will execute justice because Jeremiah sees lots of injustice. Jerusalem will live in safety because things seem very unsafe. The kingdom of Judah is trapped between rival empires, and each of those empires takes turns being the big bully on the block, engaging in missions of conquest. The Assyrians, the Babylonians, and the Egyptians all have their turn, and Jerusalem, stuck in between, is so often stuck in the service of a ruler who has pledged loyalty to a foreign power. I'm not convinced that Jeremiah is pining for the Messiah so much as he is pining for a Messiah, someone better, braver, kinder, more just, more righteous, more godly than what he sees as the jokers and the pretenders currently running the shop in his day. And so Jews and Christians alike across their history have seen a text like this and they've asked a question. Who is the Messiah? What will that Messiah look like when he is here on earth? What will happen during his reign? And yes, I heard myself speaking there during his reign. I understand the inherent sexism that is laid up in the notion that the Messiah will be, always will be, a man. The imaginations of our spiritual ancestors were broad and deep in many ways and also shallow and narrow in some others. The Messiah was imagined as a king, and the Messiah was imagined by the prophets in many other ways too. Within Judaism, the Messiah will be someone that other leaders will look to for guidance, that the whole world will turn to worship the God of Israel because of their words and their deeds. The Messiah will be descended from David and Solomon. Evil and tyranny will not be able to stand. Knowledge of God will fill the world. There will be no more hunger or illness. Death will cease. The dead will rise again. The Jewish people will experience eternal joy and gladness. The Messiah will be a messenger of peace. Ruined cities will be restored, and all weapons of war will be destroyed. In the 12th century, Maimonides looks at the characteristics that are supposed to be present in the Messiah and asks of the Christian Messiah, well, if anyone wants to suggest that Jesus is the Messiah, does that person wish for themselves to become a laughingstock? The reality, Maimonides says, is he wasn't a king, he wasn't a priest, he wasn't even a real prophet. He was nobody from nowhere in particular. He probably even spoke with an accent. He seemed at times both observant of and somewhat cavalier towards the law. He went further than Moses. Moses says, "Thou shalt not kill." Jesus says, "I'm against all vindictive anger." Moses said, "Love your neighbor." Jesus says, "Love your enemy too." Moses said, "Be good." Jesus said, "Be perfect." Rather than being the centerpiece of the religion, Jesus has constantly been a threat to establishments of any kind. And yet, too, for Maimonides and for many others, he couldn't or wouldn't unbelievably save himself. What kind of Messiah is this? When Jesus was on the cross, one of the criminals with whom he was sharing the same fate said, "If you are the Christ, save yourself and us too while you're at it." Even at the last, if you're the Messiah, pull a rabbit out of the hat for me. Save me, take me with you, prove it to me while we're up here together that you can really do this, that you really are the one. Prove it to me. We hear it throughout the Gospels in the questions that people ask. If you are the Messiah, if you are the one, and we forget that it was actually the devil in the wilderness who said, "If you are the one," throw yourself down. It was the worst in us. It was the worst inclination in us that demanded that Jesus prove power, prove messiahship, prove God, even though we already know as human beings we will never be happy, even with all of the evidence in the world right in front of our eyes. Whoever this Messiah is, his accent will sound funny or his skin color will be the wrong one. How do you prove such a thing? If you are the Messiah, so begins the question or the demand that many of us and people of faith have made throughout history. What is the Messiah? How will we know what he or she looks like, goes another. Except that I don't think those were the questions on Jeremiah's mind at all. I expect, given Jeremiah's circumstances, that he was much more interested in questions like, will there ever be prosperity again? Will there ever be justice and mercy in the land? What could it mean for all of us to prosper? As we approach Advent, we will on occasion find ourselves putting questions like, where are my keys and what is that guy's problem to the side, hopefully, and instead ask bigger, better, deeper, more foundational questions. What is it that I believe? What am I doing here? What do I actually want? Where is my life going? Is it time for a change, and what's stopping that change? And even, do I believe? Do I believe in God? Keep asking. But even the question, do I believe in God, has another step to go. As Tillich said, when you think of God and you're thinking of a reality that may or may not exist, you aren't thinking about God. Our word for God is the most common way of expressing what is an ultimate reality, or the ground of being, or the source of all that is. It's not even a word for everything in the space-time continuum. To say God is not just to poetically refer to the universe, but is a way of expressing everything. The question, do I believe in God, is not really a question of whether you believe that there is somebody or someone really cool and amazing in the universe, but whether you can name or how you're going to name ultimate reality, the ground of being. Belden Lane says, we must speak, but we cannot speak without stammering. Our language about God stalks the borderland of the limits of language, using speech to confound speech, speaking in riddles, calling us to humble silence in the presence of mystery. And perhaps that's the question for many of us this Advent. Why can I not be silent in the presence of mystery? Why must I always have answers rather than asking different questions? What is the question for you this Advent? What are you searching for? Why did you come here today? What did you really come for this morning? Peace? Prayer? Prosperity? Belief? Faith? Proof? Love? Belonging? What's your question for this Advent? What is the question in your soul? Draw near, my friends. Draw near to God. Let us pray.